My conversation with Yenson was filled with quiet insight and genuine reflection on what it means to be a young father in Hong Kong today. Though he grew up during the years when the city was transitioning from British to Chinese rule, he described his childhood as simply that, an ordinary boyhood untouched by politics or change. Yenson is a reflective thinker and a fiercely devoted dad, and it was a real pleasure to sit down with him. Have a listen. Too many boys today feel lost, alone, and misunderstood. Too many parents feel the same. Behind today's troubling statistics is a generation of boys longing to be seen, heard, and valued. And yet the conversation around boys' emotional lives is still far too quiet. This new season of Unlocking the Parenting Code is here to change that. This season, you'll hear more real conversations with young men, more expert voices on boys' mental health, more solo episodes where I share truths I've learned firsthand, and more wisdom from parents walking this road right now. It's time to open our eyes, open our hearts, and become the change our boys need. Boys aren't broken. They're waiting for us to truly see them, hear them, and stand with them. So tune in to Unlocking the Parenting Code for real conversations, real hope, and a new path forward for our boys. It's time. They're ready. Are we? Welcome back to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. I'm your host, Kathy, and today I'm welcoming Yenson She. Yenson is a father, brand strategist, and host of the podcast Ordinary But Unique. Born and raised in Hong Kong, with education that took him abroad to Cambridge, Yenson has built a career across Asia while reflecting deeply on what it means to be a modern man and a present father. Through his podcast, he opens conversations about masculinity, personal growth, and well being, inviting men to share their stories with honesty and courage. In our conversation, we'll explore fatherhood in Hong Kong, the cultural expectations placed on men, and the ways masculinity is being redefined across generations. Welcome to the show, Yenson.
Thank you for having me, Catherine.
If someone were meeting you for the first time and wanted to really understand who you are, not just what you do, what would you want them to know?
I think it's just how I usually introduce myself in a social settings that when people meeting me, I would say like, "Hi, I'm Yenson She. I was born and raised in Hong Kong. I got a passion recently in understanding and learning about how to become a better father. I also passionate in the topic of in terms of improving mental well-being, and also that's why part of my podcast is learning about how to become a better father. And on the other hand, enabling myself and my 2-year-old daughter how to um, know more about the world, know more about ourselves through compassionate, through being kind to others. So I think this is something I've been very interested into. And I've also been working for over 17 years. Although you mentioned, haven't really mentioned what I do, but I also feel like how my journey of career across different kind of industry give me quite interesting perspective from commercial to brand strategies to research to recently in philanthropy. I think like my career is a very condensed version of how a life could be like by exploring different things, always staying open, head up to the challenge. Sometimes could be frustrated, sometimes could be excited, but there's always joy behind that by experiencing different things and experiencing growth. So this is me.
Well, it sounds like curiosity is a bit of a main theme in everything.
Indeed. I am a person that I always need to find things is like interesting or fun in order to motivate me to keep exploring the world.
So, what would you say are your core values?
I think since I was a kid, I have already like having the idea that it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to be wrong, but it's important to become better next time. So if you ask me, my motto in life is like keep improving, keep progressing.
Growing up in Hong Kong, so you were born in 1986, correct?
Yes.
And so during that time, with a mix of the British colonial influence and Chinese tradition, how did that shape your sense of what it really means to be a boy, to be a man?
When I was a kid, I haven't really think from such cultural political perspective. Um, Now allow me to look back. I think it has already been part of the overall um, culture environment as a Hong Konger, as a Chinese. Um, it's interesting that when I was as a grown up, I went to study abroad. I work in different kind of companies. When people know that I got such a cultural background, people always comment that, oh, it must be a very interesting journey. I think it's kind of like a yes and no. The yes is indeed it's like a little city with the east and the west. I have a transition of like cultural and political environment and stuff like that. But on the other hand, it has been very naturally be part of the environment that I've been growing up with. So when I was a kid, I didn't really aware that there's something different because as a kid, you don't know what you don't know. You're only aware that it is the environment that you grew up with. I only recall that was a moment that my parent was considering maybe due to the uncertainty back then, considering whether to move to another countries or cities, but turns out did not because there was too much to think about. And education for me was a very key part for my parents' consideration. And back then I was in a pretty decent school. So they eventually think that maybe easier and better to just like stay here and see how things goes. And turns out, very thankfully, everything was fine and very smooth. Nothing really happened. And but to your questions, I think when I was a kid, from time to time, you will be aware that there were news and things um, that I saw on the TV, I listened from the radio, but I did not really understand like what does it really mean. Like it seems to be big things. Maybe now as a grown up, look back of those like news recap or those show talking about how in the past 20 years, like Hong Kong has been transforming. And yes, I would find that there's actually a lot of things has been changing. But back then as a kid, I didn't really aware any of those. It was so um, it was more like as a kid um, how to go down to the playground and play with your friends every day. You got to go to school, think about examinations. Um, you are growing up and learning on a day-to-day basis of how to um, become a bigger boy the next day, the next month, the next year. So it was what has been running through my mind. And that political changes, cultural differences, is more like subtly as part of me, but it was not really how I was very cautious and aware that oh things is changing and I'm as a little boy in this city that has been is going through a very different transformation that I was cautious or I was even anxious of what's going to happen. It really didn't come to my mind like that.
So I wonder for your parents, like they would have grown up under the British rule. So when you were raised, like was your home environment, was it really kind of a cultural mix, or did they try to um, instill more of the Chinese culture, or what was that like culturally growing up?
Ah,
Because they would have been they wouldn't have direct Chinese influence, would they? Like that was 100 years.
is my personal point of view that I think from the 70s to 90s, these 20-ish years, Hong Kong is a small city, it has been going through a lot of like transformation and development. I think as a person living in this city, there's a lot of how to say cultural nuances and mainly the day to day you're actually experiencing the pop culture of your everyday life. I, as a Chinese, I would say there's different Chinese traditions. For example, Chinese New Year. Today is the Mid Autumn Festival. So this kind of like more traditional cultural things and festivals we also like celebrate. And the thing is more like on a day-to-day basis, those like pop cultural thing we back in the 80s and 90s, like cell phone is not as popular, YouTube is not as popular. We as a family, we watch like TV every night. We're chasing the same soap drama every night, and we go back to school, we share with our friends. I watch the same cartoon. So I think back then as a boy, like I think it's a little bit similar to your previous questions. Like we didn't know what we don't know. History point of view, the cultural point of view, you do see things is actually very different. But back then, no, like everyday life as it is, I don't really aware of anything very special about myself. I I'm not very culturally aware of like how different province of Japan is like, but I got some Japanese friend. They mentioned that like people from Tokyo versus people from Osaka is Kansai. The language that they use, the little subtle like cultural differences could be very different, and people keep mocking about like each other. I got friends from two different cities, but to to me as a Chinese, I look at Japan. It's a beautiful country. It's very disciplined. It's very clean. It's a place I love, like traveling with my families. So as an outsider, I don't really aware of all of those like cultural nuances. What I'm trying to say is, when you be part of those, you see how you are um, living your everyday life. When people coming in, you observe the differences, but it's rarely you will suddenly take a step back and zoom out and then look at things. Oh, we're so different. Like I was not really aware of those until I got the opportunity to become an exchange student in the last year of my university in the States. That was a liberal arts college. I was with the freshman group with people from 40 different countries. That was actually the very first time I realized people could be so different from different background and countries and culture. I was just a little kid living in a city. The big changes historically and culturally may seem big now looking back, or back then as an adult they did see like it is a huge thing, but as a boy like I wasn't aware of that at all. I know that there's something happening, but if you ask me, is it something very um very is a thing to me? Not really.
So, throughout your education in Hong Kong, were your classmates mostly Chinese Hong Kongs, or did you have a mixture, an international mixture?
Not really. I was studying. I have been studying in a local school, local educational system. Hong Kong has a international school system, but I was not in that. I was throughout um, my education life has been in the local education system, and all of my friends and classmates they're from local Hong Kong. And
Okay.
statistically speaking, actually Hong Kong, I think over 95 or even 90, 97, 98% are actually like Chinese, and then mixing with like domestic helpers, maybe 1 point something percent is international people. So it is interesting. Hong Kong considered as a international city. I think from a financial market point of view, yes. From the cultural and historical point of view, yes. But from the demographic mix, is actually quite focused on Chinese.
When you think about looking back and how you grew up as a boy in the mid 80s in Hong Kong, and then you look at how you are raising your daughter today, what stands out the most different in like daily life or parenting?
I think the awareness of building self-confidence and the awareness of like having good mental well-being is very different. I don't think it's just a cultural thing, but I think it's swimming back. I try to like read up and analyze this um, before um, when I know that I become a father, like how to become a better father, anything different versus like um, the time that when I was being parented. And I was aware that back in the 80s, um, we were kids of parents from from the baby boomer generation. I think back then there has been a lot of they as parents they have a lot of opportunities riding on the economic growth. So at their generation, many people think that as long as you are hardworking or you are in a cities or in a place where the economy was booming, which Hong Kong was one of those, then you got a lot of opportunity to go upward on the social ladder. Um, and how they differentiate with each other a lot of time is not just about hard working, but how much good education that they could access to. Because for that generation, people who could access to good education, then they are those being qualified maybe nowadays as like senior executives or government officials. So back then, they're very aware and cautious that like having receiving good education means so much to climb up the social ladder. And with because that was something that they did not have, so when they are parenting us in my generation, I can understand why they focus so much on getting finding a good school, and because that means that you could climb the social ladder, you could earn more money. A better primary school means better secondary school means better university means better jobs. So this is a kind of like a linear thinking in terms of like how education means to a better life that they as parents want to offer their best for us. But I'm aware that like being very thankful if in my as like millennial, if we're growing up from a maybe middle class family or you got the opportunity to climb up the social ladder to become middle class or above, then what you're missing is no longer as much as our parent generation that we have to earn more money to define ourselves as success. We no longer just need to climb up the social ladder because we can have better life. Because like very thankfully, we are already somehow on that social tier already. Then we will just reflect and look back like in our when we were growing up, anything was missing. And and then in our reflection, we realize when if the parents just push for academic success, sometimes may just neglect that the emotional needs, the psychological safety that they should have developed. So I find it interesting in including myself and my generation of parents, there are a much larger ratio of parenting. They start talking about we we need to build up the confidence of our kids. We need to have teach our kids to be self-compassionate, not to be too self-criticizing. I think it's because it is what our generation's missing. Thanks to more being more resourceful, we worry less about money, but we then have the privilege to start thinking about other than money, what is important. And that's why I think um, being confident, being aware of your own emotions, being aware that what you want to do and how to find ways to achieve those like high meaning is important. So hope I can answer your questions. I know I have tell like a very long theory, but it is something that when now I'm parenting my daughter, I try not to just plan for what primary school, well, no, not what kindergarten could lead to better primary school, lead to better high school. I'm more aware and cautious that as long as she knows what she wants, I may sound a bit naive, but if it turns out that she may not very book smart, I think it's fine if she is being mentally strong and resilient. She'll be able to figure out her own way.
Does your wife feel the same?
Yeah, we're quite aligned on this.
Do you notice any cultural pressures around masculinity in Hong Kong that feel rather uniquely local? Like, and how would that differ from what you know or you've heard about what masculinity might mean in mainland China?
I find in general, this part of the world, or Asian and Chinese culture in general, the perception of man that needs to be strong physically and mentally, still very a general perception. Um, Expressing sadness and pain and vulnerability is not something being appreciated. I think still a lot of people consider um, expressing sadness, emotions, not emotions, especially sadness, and is equal to weakness. I think that is something I still feel like quite strong about when I try to invite people um, to my podcast as an interviewee. Um, I think the reason why I position my podcast as more as an international audience and inviting people from all over the world is because I find it's easier to find interviewee that they are willing to share their emotions and to explore what is mean by masculinity, which in my personal definition, I think definitely um, strength should be including being vulnerable, being expressive, being aware of your own positive and negative emotion. But I think in general, this part of the world or Chinese culture still find it as nah, as men, we don't express our emotions that much. It's not cool, it's not strong. I won't tell you whether I'm sad. I don't someone don't even remember when was the last time I was crying. So there's I think more general speaking, in the eastern part of the world and in Chinese culture, this perception of being masculine is still quite older definition of like masculinity.
So, how was it personally for you growing up, like with you and your dad? Because he would have been your first example of what a man is and what role a father plays.
My father had never been a very emotionally expressive person, but it doesn't mean he was not kind. He's actually a very kind man. He's just like not very extroverted, not very articulative to me, to the family, or even to his friends. But I think my father as a role model when I was a kid was because he always knows everything. Like I ask because I'm the wide questioning kid. I ask why on everything, and he always got the patience to like explain things to me. Sometimes even like making things up just to mock with me. But I find it very funny, and I just like go back to school and share with my friends like my father told me there's like such and such yesterday, and my friend said that no, that's not true. Saying no, yeah, that's true. And I went back to my father and said that my friend told me that like that's not true. It's wrong. And my father just like laughed it off, saying, yeah, that's partly true and partly wrong. Maybe that is wrong. He has been very in my childhood, he has been a very playful father who taught me swimming, running, bicycle, those kind of stuff. So there was a lot of like joy for me to be part of because I'm also a single child. So like having a companion to play with to teach me things. That was my impression and perception of my father back then. It was less on the emotional expression part of it, which I think throughout my childhood, that part was like I was underdeveloped. And that's why I'm trying very hard to ramp up myself and teach my daughter now I'm becoming a father. But I don't consider that that was a mistake. It's just like different parenting styles different. And back then, my father's approach was like being there, play with me, make fun with me, teach me things, and it was also very joyful back then when he was parenting me.
What role did your mother play?
My mother was a full-time housewife. So she pretty much like take care of me every day, from like cooking to teaching me my homework and taking me to school classes on a day-to-day basis. Father was more as the one who played with me, teaching me non-book things. My mother was more like taking up that role, taking care of the overall families, making sure like I hand in my homework on time and finishing everything. So the combining like the effort is like how my overall life is being taken care of.
So if you had an emotional issue as a young boy, which parent would you go to?
Huh. Back then, none of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Who would you go to? A
If I
peer?
need to pick one, or who did I go to?
Yeah, who did you go to?
If I got some emotional problem, if I'm not going to my parents, then who would I go to, right? Um, I I go to my friends. I'll share with my friends, or I'll just like keep it with myself.
So what changed for you what changed for you when you became a father yourself?
I think the moment that I knew I becoming father, I already very aware that I need to be more self-aware in terms of my how to be aware of my emotions, how to process it, and how to express it. Because I knew it is something that I underdeveloped. So before I could teach my daughter to be more emotional aware, I first need to unlearn and relearn again of how to process my own emotions.
Yes, if you had a son instead of a daughter,
Mm.
what do you imagine would feel different in your parenting?
I would be even more aware of his development, because I am aware that like now as a girl father, physically development of girls is is a bit faster than boys. And if I have a boy, I will be more cautious of like how his development is, whether it's on track, or especially after when he start like going to school, whether he will, or I as a parent would compare his development versus other kids. Because one of my reflection is back in my childhood time, my school time, even now as an adult, I couldn't help but keep comparing with other people to, to benchmark, to want to gain that um, peace of mind by knowing that I am better than others, or I'm at least on track. I think this mindset is something very rooted um, since I was a kid, that how I was raised, how the education system make me constantly need to like compete with others and benchmark with others. But by knowing that the developing stage of boys is lagging a little bit behind because of like the physical and brain development versus girls, I'll be cautious of like how my kid is doing, how to embrace and accept his uniqueness, and try not to let him feel like father and mother is trying to comparing his development versus others.
That's really challenging. When I was raising my son, I longed for a guide, something real, honest, and grounded in what boys truly need. So I created the book that I wish I'd had. Packed with tools and real world strategies that actually work, you'll learn how to nurture his emotional world and finally understand the feelings behind his behavior. Because boys don't need punishment, they need guidance. We'll bust the myths that keep boys boxed in and help you support him through the real challenges of growing up. Most of all, it's about transforming your connection, one small moment at a time. Raising boys who become remarkable men Get your copy today and let's create a beautiful future together.
I
Mm.
I can say it now, but I have a big question about whether I could do it. But at
Yeah.
least I want to remind myself that I need to do it because now I have a girl with my peers. They they're already thinking about how to. Well, although I mentioned that like the getting into better school maybe of a less of a concern versus my parent generation, but I still think that you as an educator, um, getting into so-called better school, even the best school, is still the priority of most of the parents, including myself. But it's just the definition of like good school could be slightly different versus others. But what I'm trying to say is with the peers that me and my wife is like having parent dates, the you can't help but like talk about the development and then the school of your kids. Like which school are you like applying to? And sometimes some parents they're very happy and very proud of like they're getting to one of the top-notch school in town. And then that very moment I would just like be mindful and aware that okay, I'm not comparing. I'm not saying my daughter is not capable, it's just or whether she have to comparing with these kids. But it's just I need to pause and then be aware that because my in Hong Kong definition, my daughter was born in September. A lot of time school starting in September, so she is considered to be the very we call it small baby because who needs to become too in order to apply for some school. So she missed a lot of like application deadline last year. Um, it is how my friends described. Oh, your daughter is going to miss all of those application deadlines. I said, no, 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 that's not missing. There's just it's no problem for her to be born in September. I'm very blessed to have my daughter. Whatever month that she was born with, I'll be very happy. I will still celebrate with her. It's just she hasn't been there yet. So we'll just like follow the system set up for its own reason. It doesn't. I know some parents they try to hack the system. They try to calculate which months they should try to start making a baby so that the baby should become a big baby, not a small baby. To me, I'm like, if you look at the odds of being able to have a baby and who is healthy is already so little chance, and you're already such a blessed parent in this world. So I try not to stress my daughter, including myself, by considering that she missed all of those deadlines. Just she hasn't been there yet, and we'll just figure it out. Thanks to technology, the average life expectancy may be 80 years, and my daughter generation may be even over 100 years. Now she's only the first 1 to 2 years. I try not to stress her by thinking that she's already lagging behind. There's no such thing as lagging behind because everyone's supposed to be unique. So, yeah, this is how I think about I should keep keeping that awareness, try not to benchmark and compare my daughter versus others. If I'm having a boy, I will be reminding myself to I need to be even more cautious about this.
I wonder if you can, just imagine when your daughter is, say, 20 or 30 even, or the same age that you are now. How would you know, like, what would it look like that you would say, "Oh, I did a good job. I was a
Huh.
good dad."
She knows how to take care of herself. She's being kind not just to others, but herself. She's aware of what she want to do, and she have the courage and have the plan to try it out. That's it.
And like as far as careers or marriage, does any of that matter to you?
As long as she knows what she wants and she's taking care of herself, I I would keep reminding myself that she need to walk on her own path.
What would you think would be her perfect partner?
I think no such thing as perfect. If you ask my wife, I don't consider she'll say that I'm perfect either. And So no one is perfect, but I think back to that guiding principle that I just mentioned, when she loves herself and she know how to love other person, I would trust that her partner will not be will not be too bad. A lot of time people stuck in toxic relationship because they don't know how to love themselves. And if my daughter knows how to love herself, she know how to choose people that who truly cares about her. And then partnership is a two-way relationship. It's a journey that people try to figure out together. So I don't consider this a perfect partner, but you need to find a partner that who is willing to contribute and receive respectfully, mutually, and willing to walk onto this journey together to try to keep it's like a tangle dance. Like we need to walk together. Sometimes one person is too fast, the other person need to catch up. But when on the other hand, when you're too fast, you're willing to slow down to just wait for another person. I think this that partnership everyone needs to learn, which I'm also learning. But fundamentally, if you know how to love yourself in order to learn how to love others, I don't think things will be too bad. I just seen sometimes some people I know, they don't know how to love themselves, and um, relationship become not very healthy because they're contributing not for the sake of like loving people. It's just they just want to be recognized. They just want to they just want to be felt important. And I don't think that is healthy. And it sounds say that it's very straightforward, like love yourself so that you know how to love people, so that you can find people who loves you. But it, in reality, it is so difficult.
Mhm. It
Yeah.
is. I would also think that having a male role model that is as reflective as you are and does talk about, these issues, that your daughter will probably grow up to have a very healthy image of what masculinity means, and that will affect her choices if she chooses to have a mate. When was it that you first realized that men really need to talk about their feelings? And do you see your peers today being able to be more vulnerable than perhaps in the past or in your parents' generation?
To your second question, I think yes. I think in general, there are a lot more people aware of their own emotions. And I think the overall environment also becoming more accepting and welcoming for men to express their own emotions. To your first questions, when did I start it? I want to start a podcast. I think two drivers. First was knowing that I'm becoming a father. As mentioned, I want to learn from others and have a platform to keep practicing and learning and reflecting of how I could become a better father and parent. So there's one thing. And another thing was due to something happening in my family, my own father passing away, that also gave me a lot of reflections of how I could digest and channel these emotions in a good way. So I think having setting up a podcast, talking to different people, learning from different people would be a good way for me to keep reflecting and improving.
What would you say is like the biggest challenge for men today?
Speaking from my own perspective, I think for men in the because I'm going through my 30-ish to 40-ish this 10 years. Um, I've been reading different articles, different listening to podcasts. People mentioning that this could be one of the most challenging 10 years in our lives because we're in the middle of so many things. When we just become a parent, a first-time parent, that is already a very heavy burden on the shoulder. given that this generation of father actually spend a lot more time having that awareness, they need to spend time with their kid. So it's not just like in previous generation, a lot of time because they need to be the breadwinner for the family. So they just let the parenting responsibility more on the mother. But nowadays is different. So I think having this, I think it's a good thing that having that awareness and feel like having the responsibility, have a stronger um, father role in family is important. But also it become quite a bit of responsibility there. So I think number one. Number two is we're also in the um, mid of our career. And my podcast, after talking to different people, some willing to be interviewed, some not. But I find that almost every one of us in this life stage, we struggle in terms of our career to different extent. Um, whether we should be keep climbing up, whether we have the opportunity to keep improving, keep climbing up, or some people may just lost their job, they're stuck in the middle. They still need to, they may still be the breadwinner of the family, or our generation associate so much of our self-esteem and achievement with career achievement as well. So I think this is another tremendous stress that we're putting on the shoulder, in addition to if you're a parent. So I think that's number two. And number three, also we're facing the, the stage that maybe family and friends, they may be passing away, starting to pass away because of the age we're getting into. So we also at the same time need to digest all of the uncertainty, taking up the role as a caregiver, or even processing the grief that we're going through. And with the you're the sandwich generation, in addition to try to gain yourself esteem and recognition through career, through your relationship. So when everything mixing together, and as mentioned previously, we're still we just started to have a high awareness of how to express our own emotion and vulnerability. It's actually a way of being strong. People think that, okay, you're calling for help, you're weak. No, like calling for help is actually being strong and being responsible. But this mindset is still, or this concept is still quite new to quite a number of people and men. So I think to answer your question, I think all of this stress, responsibility, challenges accumulating together, and if a person without the capacity to be aware of it, to reflect it, and to channel it in the right direction, and then in order to articulate and express it, it somehow explain why in official statistically mentioned 10 to 20% of men in the world is having chronic anxiety and depression. And the suicidal rate of men in this part of the world is 4 times higher in general.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if the statistics kind of are the same as they are in North America, because there's so much talk about male mental health, the depression, anxiety, pressure. And then on top of that, there's a lot of conversation about the loneliness that men feel and the lack of friendships that they cultivate or keep, so that you end up being quite isolated as a young man. So with all the extra pressures on that, it can be a lot. In Hong Kong, is it, or with your, generation of young men, like, are people open to getting professional help, like getting help
Mm,
from a therapist or a counselor
no,
or
my generation, I think it's not much. I think the Gen Z is getting better, but I don't think it's enough. One of the example is that when when I was openly telling people that I'm seeing counselor, people will be having that like funny look. It's like, you're seeing counselor. Um, and then I would just follow them say that no, it's actually helped me so much. Like it's uh, people find it so common to have a fitness trainer, a PT, when you go to the gym, and a counselor is more like as a mental trainer to allow you to digest and process your own emotions. In my opinion, it should be as common and straightforward as that. It should not be any taboo. Of course, if people think that they're seeing a psychologist or they're having psych is it psychiatrist, right?
Mm.
For mental issues. That is something that even a lot worse. But um, I think it's kind of like a spectrum of you want to stay fit, you find a trainer. If touch wood, you got a flu or you fall sick, then you need to see a doctor. And it's just everything applies the same to your mental well-being as well. So I find my generation, or I think it's getting better and better. The older generation still find it quite taboo, and as a millennial, there's more people start talking about it. I think especially for people to be more open mind or with exposed to more like cultural awareness, because I think this kind of things is more common in the western part of the world. And what I'm glad to see is for younger generation, I got some friends and acquaintance. They're from Gen Z or even younger. They was they told me that like, oh, I think the company should have more allowance for mental well-being. There should be more slots and sessions for uh, from insurance offering on like counseling and mental well-being training, stuff like that. So I see that the awareness is building up. The younger generation is being more open and aware, but I still don't consider that is enough.
Even just doing what you're doing with your podcast, though, that's a very strong start to conversations, for men. A lot of places that's kind of where it starts, and then you will find, maybe you start up a men's group and you meet once every week or 2 weeks, and you have real conversations about real issues and challenges that men are facing, and but that you're creating the safe environment where people know they're not going to be judged or ridiculed for being vulnerable. But I would say that even if it's not culturally so prominent at the moment, just the simple fact that you started the kind of podcast that you have is one door that's opening for young men to be able to talk about fatherhood, and that's a very positive beginning, I would say.
Thank you so much for saying that. I hope I could be this little contribution to a much bigger trend and movement. I do miss some friends and professional. They are creating this kind of like a man chat group
Mm.
in town or in the region, which I think those are very motivating initiative that they're doing.
So, how, as a young man, young father, in the culture that you're living in, doing what you're doing with your life, how do you manage and balance your own mental health? Like, what do you do?
I think eat well, sleep well, and exercise. It sounds very basic, but for me, it's super, super important.
Yeah.
I got a tracker on my wrist. I wear it 24/7. Um, it became a very good reminder for me to look at my metrics every day to see whether I'm having enough rest. And and on a weekly basis, I will reflect on my week, whether in a scale of 1 to 10, where I am. Um, Ideally, I will expect myself at least on a scale of like I think 7 is quite optimal. I don't expect it to be 10. But if that week work stress is especially high, or anything happen, if it drop down to 3, 4, or 5, then I need to immediately find a ways to adjust this. Or maybe that week is particularly busy. I usually need to exercise or hit the gym, ideally at least 3 times a week. So having 7 hours sleep, eating okay, um, and exercise 3 times a week, I think this base a very important baseline for me to feel good about myself. And in addition, um, I I still keep seeing my counselor once to 2 months on that basis for me to digest and channel my emotions to learn to be self-aware. I think there's another thing. And my wife suggested me a mobile app that will just ping me and check in of my emotions on a daily basis. I don't input that on a every time when it pings me, but I find it super helpful for me because it's a very well designed mobile app. It allows you to select, I think, over almost kind of like 100 words of describing different kind of emotions, and it will facilitate me to reflect and then to name it. A lot of time when you could name your emotions, then you know how to tame it. And it's also give me a reminder that I would tend to, if I could identify positive emotions, I would also like tends to select more positive words than negative words. It to me, it also enabled me to it is not forcefully making me be positive, but it allowed me to select what perspective that I try to look into things. And it's also a very good reminder that everything's could you could look at it from a bright side or in the dark side. And this kind of reminder allowed me to always try to, because I want to, I try not to be being very negative when something's happened. And also a good reminder for me to stay positive. And I think last but not least, how to connect with family and friends is important. Um, my 2 year old is like so adorable and she's my source of energy. And having the opportunity to raise her together with my wife sometimes may be very tiring. Like 2 days ago, when she just got her injections, got a slight fever, and she crying nonstop. But after a day, when the fever goes, like she is being so adorable again. And this kind of thing also make me ground me and make me aware that like just to treasure and enjoy the moment because she just grew up so fast. I'm not sure whether she will still keep crying for daddy and mommy for how many years.
I have two final questions. The first one is, do you think that the modern man, today's man in Hong Kong, would he look different than the modern man in London or Toronto or New York? Or do you think we're kind of moving towards kind of a universal modern man image?
I tend to think that we're moving towards more as a universal modern man image. Of course, there will be different nuances from a cultural point of view or how things being developed. I think I believe things happen in trend. Back to my haven't validated theory. I think this generation and the next generation of man, um, since we got more um, resources as a developed city person, people think we in our Maslow triangle, we satisfy the basic needs, then people start like seeking for more self-assurance, self-awareness, self-compassion, those kind of needs. So I think like we're all heading towards that direction, which is a good thing. Um, I also hopefully with the development of like technology, with the recent AI trend, with information could be sent within milliseconds across the world. um, I tends to be more positive, thinking that thanks to technology, people should have more means and ways to express themselves, to learn from each other. And this could potentially bridging the gap of making people more um, engaged and more and enabling them to be more expressive when things like going in this direction. I'm also aware why I'm said that I'm positive because I know with the technology and everything, it's somehow also making people more isolated and just by themselves. They just like staying in front of a computer every day. But I very much hope that with more and more people starting this kind of conversation, creating those like chat group of promoting mental well-being, I tend to hope that there will be a balance and equilibrium that people eventually could be benefit from this technology, which technology itself should be neutral. It's just whether they're in good hands and know how to use it. So to answer your questions, I hope that we're heading towards the direction of being more universal and being more aware and reflective. Yeah, that's what I hope for.
And the final question, who in your life most quietly models the kind of man you want to be? And what is one ordinary thing that they do that really matters?
I have a teacher who is a Buddhist monk. A lot of Buddhist practice helps me so much. One of the most fundamental thing is compassionate. And in recent years, I learned that before you could be compassionate to others, it's very important for you to learn and practice compassionate first. So I think how to be kind to yourself in order to make yourself feel grounded. You're not panicking. You're not seeking external validation. You're not projecting your insecurity um, that indirectly making you to attack others. I think this self-compassionate things is what my teacher have taught me, and I think that's very important. And he is that role model. I don't consider myself could be live up to the um, standard and practice of a monk, but I think he is a very good role model, a teacher who could always give me the sense of calmness and stay grounded when I have the opportunity to meet him and talk to him.
Before we finish today, Jensen, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had?
Yes, one thing that I very much appreciate you asked me in that preparation questionnaire, which is a question something like, as a, if we're raising a boy, is there anything that we would expect him to learn, or as a parent that we should have done or we should not have done something around that? And it makes me reflect that I saying, um, if we're parenting a boy, we try not to make him feel like how he um, should act very stereotype of what a boy should be. I don't know whether I could articulate it clearly, but for example, my daughter, she loves playing balls and cars. And I got some comment from others saying that it's such a boyish thing for your daughter to do. And I say, no, like as long as she likes it, there's no boy or girl thing. Don't try to be so gender stereotyped. So I think there's something that I because of your questions, I want to make sure that be it you're raising a girl or raising a boy, how to I don't know how to strike the best balance, but allow them to explore their own interests. Try not to judge or comment too early of whether what you're doing is too boyish or too girly. It is just a very good reminder that I got reflected thanks to your question.
Well, that's nice feedback. One of the things that I often talk about and struggle to get parents to recognize is our own unconscious gender biases. And those are the times where, as soon as you know it's a boy or it's a girl, everything is pink or it's blue.
Yes.
You have to have the dolls or the trucks. And we can fall into those, into that mindset without ever, thinking twice about it. And so that's what the conversation I think needs to be around. It's just be curious. Like, would you do the same thing? Would you offer the same toy? Would you react the same way if this was your daughter and if it was your son? Or would you change how you're talking, how you're being, how you're offering, how you're disciplining, depending on whether it's a girl or boy? And if you do reflect on that, you can really catch some of your own biases. And just that awareness will let you make a more intentional parenting step the next time. It's important.
Completely agree.
Yenson, where can people get in contact with you, find out more about your podcast and the work that you do?
They can just simply like find my name like Yenson She, YENSONSHE on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and my podcast is Ordinary but Unique. You can just simply search me, and hopefully I could learn more from you all in the future.
Well, I'll make sure I put those in the notes, and I would highly recommend people to listen to your podcast. I love the name, and I think it's very beautiful. So I know how precious time is, and I hope that you feel that I honored yours today. It has been such a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm sure that there are pieces of this that will help another young parent trying to find their way and raising children the same as you are in the same environment, perhaps in others. There are so many commonalities and challenges and gifts around being a father. Um, this was a very lovely conversation to create a little more reflection, I believe. So thank
Um,
you very much, Jensen.
Thank you so much, Catherine. The honor is mine, and you allowed me to have such a self-reflective conversation. I need to thank you so much for this.
It's really been my pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
thank you to our listeners for joining us on Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. Be sure to check out Jensen's links in the show notes and don't forget to subscribe, share, and tune in next week for more conversations about boys and men. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. Every conversation we have here is a step toward raising boys who feel seen, heard, and deeply valued. If you're looking for more support on this journey, I invite you to visit me at sonhoodcoaching.com. You'll find a link in the show notes. And as always, thank you for being part of this important movement. Until next time, take good care.